Have you ever considered the influence that certain right-wingers, Australian right-wingers, in fact, may have on the way that Americans and other people in the world may view us? Well, YouTube algorithm decided that I should find out a little bit more about what the right-wingers are doing around the world, and the Australian right-wingers in particular. So it sent me a couple of videos that I found rather interesting, to say the least. And I'm going to play a couple of those segments for you. So the first one is is about Thomas Sewell. And Thomas, probably most of you know as a neo-Nazi who was arrested for a fray here in Australia at the Australia First rally. Now, he appears on a show called Jake Shield's Fight Back podcast, which has quite a following apparently. It has over 100,000 subscribers, and it's about two friggin' crazy individuals who, for whatever reason, seem to be quite popular. Now, he's on their show talking about Australia and how Australians have responded to immigration because he's a racist, and he's spreading his racist views and is talking about Australia in ways which I find a little wee bit uncomfortable. They're his views. Look, I would agree with the right for him to say whatever it is that he wants to say, providing what he says is not inciting violence and is not directly attempting to harm or hurt other people. But and he kind of walks a fine line about all of that. And the other person that I'll be talking about too is this other person that some of you may or may not know about, and it's Erin Molan, who appears on a podcast which is still quite successful in the US called PagerU. And so she's an Australian woman, was a journalist, worked with Sky News and did some sports stuff and so on. She talks a little bit about that in this podcast. But what I'm interested in is the view that some of these people have, which I find it's sure, I understand it's their view. Perhaps I shouldn't say that it's inaccurate. It is simply their view, and it is kind of a taste that they're offering of Australian society. But I find it a wee bit disturbing. So I'm going to take a couple of these segments and play them for you. And the first one is Thomas. Now, Thomas is going to talk a little bit about why he has become so famous, because he's a white nationalist and because he's anti-Semitic and he's just blatantly racist. So he's going to talk a little bit about this, but he's got a lot of coverage as a result of this. And it seems to me that this is an opportunity for him to build his profile, not just in Australia, but around the world. And it's a bit like Tommy Robinson and some of the stuff that he's done. And I'm skeptical of him because of who he is, but I'm also skeptical because I don't think that he necessarily offers anything constructive in the debate about migration here in Australia. Far from it, in fact. In fact, it's all very counterproductive. So I'll start playing this bit of him, and then I'll go to an ABC item which talks about his incarceration and his arrest. So this is the bit that I'm going to play about him, and we'll talk about it as we go through it.
Again?
Yeah, so second time, I book all my own guests except my producer booked you, and I'm like, who is this guy? And I think we talked before. I'm like, oh yeah, he's really cool. I like him. But let's just get in. I think we need to start this thing before we get into the fun stuff. Something really important, really crazy going on. I'm not sure how much you follow, Dan, but he got arrested. Why don't you walk through it? Because I don't even understand why you were in jail, why you weren't offered bail. Maybe break the story down for us a little bit.
Yeah, let's go to the start, because I've heard a little bit as well, but I don't know the kind of like full breakdown.
So there was a series of Patriot rallies across Australia in every capital city on August 31st. It just organically was organized by people on Twitter, like just anonymous people. It wasn't like big personalities. And lots of mums and dads came out and started helping organize it. And just because of the heat from the media and the government, who were doing everything they could to shut these rallies down, to discourage people from attending, from threatening them for attending. In Sydney, they even shut down a whole bunch of the public transport to stop people getting into the CBD. On top of that, you had your friends, your favorite people, the communists, the Antifa, that go around, firebombing people's homes.
So I just love the way he had to bring up Antifa, which is not an organisation, which doesn't exist, but nevertheless, and communists. So it's about the far left, communism, immigration, people that look different and speak differently to what he does.
And doxing people and having people get their, bank accounts shut down or job losses. Those people came down in the hundreds with the intention of fighting the far right, which is the Australian patriots, the people that love Australia and don't want to see Australia.
I love the way the far right, the people that love Australia, and those of us that sit on the other side of the spectrum, clearly, according to this dude, do not
turn into the kind of third world shithole that they're trying to turn it into, these politicians. And so with all the forces of the far left and the government and the media against us, our organisation, which is called White Australia, we're an organisation that represents all the white people here in Australia, and we have like an activist network called the NSM.
Isn't he just revolting? I just can't. Right, at least he's up there and he's open and he's honest about it to some extent, I guess.
And we went down there in our black shirts. I don't know if you've seen the uniform, but we have like a set sort of clothing standard. And we went down there in large numbers and helped make sure the rally happened with all the forces trying to stop it. And in Melbourne specifically, which is the second biggest city in Australia, where I'm from, we had hundreds of counter-protesters come down with rocks and glass bottles filled with piss and, tins of fruit and stuff like that, like, serious objects. They came down and just pelted them at people at the rally to basically just use violence and terror to stop just everyday mums and dads coming down waving Aussie flags.
And the issue here is that he himself is not a terrorist, but he did get, now this conversation with Sewell went on for over an hour, and he talks about lots of issues which are about white nationalists getting rid of immigration, we're setting the country down the gurgler because we've got so many people that have different colour skin and ethnicity coming into the country. That sort of shit. This is what he's talking about all the time. And he was asked though about why he got arrested. So I wanted to be clear that we needed to understand what this arrest was all about. So this is the article in the ABC where he talked about getting arrested, and this particular magistrate locked him up for 72 days or something, and then another magistrate granted him bail. And he was celebrating the fact that this great magistrate granted him bail. Doesn't alter the fact that that he was charged with attacking an Aboriginal campsite in Melbourne, and that he was extremely violent in relation to all of this. Neo-Nazi Thomas Sewell has been released from prison 2 months after a magistrate ruled he was too dangerous to live in the community and could interfere with witnesses in a criminal case. Sewell, the leader of the National Socialist Network, was granted bail on appeal to Victoria's Supreme Court on Thursday. The 32-year-old is facing 25 charges, including violent disorder and affray, and is one of 15 people charged over an incident at a First Nations camp in Melbourne's King Domain. Prosecutors allege he led a large group of far-right extremists to attack occupants of Camp Sovereignty on August 31st. So when Sewell talks about the fact that he was attacked and that they were throwing stuff at him and all that sort of stuff, and then you think about the fact that he chose to attack a group of Aboriginal people who simply had their own camp, and that his attack was racially orientated, that it was his goal to attack Indigenous people because he dislikes and hates Aboriginal people, is horrible, horrible. So he is. So Sewell is alleged to have kicked and punched a person during a melee at which 7 victims had been identified at the Supreme Court. In September, Magistrate Donna Bakos denied Sewell bail, saying the risk to the community was too high. And then later on, he gets released. My point is that the man is dangerous. He is abusive. He is violent. He is spreading a program of corruption, of hate, of fear, of resentment, of white nationalism. This is what he's doing. And he's telling through the internet the rest of the world that this is who Australia is, according to him. And it's just simply not true. And then I have Erin Molan. Now, she's a woman who was a reporter for Sky News. What can one expect anything further from that? But she was, and she has a view of Australia, which isn't the same necessarily as what Thomas Sewell's is, but is similar in many ways. So I'm just going to play a little bit of a clip of her talking about her version of who Australia is. And we need to be mindful that this isn't who we are, incidentally.
Shapes a narrative of someone who's not going to then go and Google. Someone getting out of the car with their shopping, here's the opening line of the ABC, which says, day 720 of Israel's illegal invasion of Gaza. I mean, there is nothing further from the truth, but that starts to shape a mentality. And when you teach kids in your own country that we are colonizers, that we are racist, that we should have no national pride, we don't play our national anthem anymore because that's offensive, the Australian flag is considered racist. How can we be surprised when all of a sudden they jump onto this cause that they think makes them better people, or they look like they're empathetic because suddenly they're caring about kids in Gaza? Well, join the bloody club. I care about kids in Gaza as much, if not more, than anyone else in Australia.
No, you don't. You're a bullshit artist. It's as simple as that, Erin. But I guess that's the theme. The theme is that according to her, is that we don't respect anything anymore, and that we're not seeing. Whenever I go to a sporting event, I'm pretty sure I see the national anthem being sung and people standing to celebrate Australia through the national anthem. I don't know what she's talking about. And then there's this whole woke thing about trans people and so on. And it's disturbing, to say the least, that these are the types of conversations that these people are having. So this is Erin having a conversation with a podcaster in the United States talking about Australia in a way which I find personally offensive. I don't know what you think of all of that, whether you find some of these things that these right-wingers are saying are offensive. I'm a great one for advocating for freedom of speech. I don't care who you are. Feel free to say whatever you need to say. But also, on the other hand, we have the right, as my YouTube channel has been designed to do, to push back against anything that you might say, which I find offensive. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. In the meantime, take care.